Record.
Shit.
Go.
Okay, go. Okay.
Oh, tell them about the worm first. What?
No, first up to stage.
Okay, let's go.
Good intro, Mike.
Take one.
Shut, Darren, please.
Define it.
Shut up. Quiet.
The question is not what the man can do for the worm, but what the worm can in fact do for the man. Today's educationary system dictates at a high school level that a student's opinion is not worth shit. Yet is this true? The man is questioning what he can do to help the worm. Thus, the worm is in fact inducing thought. Is this not making the man think about the status of the worm later on? As worms are 90% water, the symbolic archetype for the unconscious, the man sees himself in the worm and his struggle with life. Michael?
Now, as we look at archetypes, water and the worm, which is 9%, are 10% off, not much difference. Water, there's two main archetype meanings, the mystery of creation and the unconscious. Now, as it's a sunny day, the sun represents consciousness, hitting the man first before it lands on the worm. Now, the man blocks the worm, creating a shadow effect. Now, in Jungian psychology, we know that the shadow is a sum of those characteristics we wish to conceal, not only from the world, but also especially from ourselves. The sun's rays is what we could know, but the teacher shields us from that, resulting in a Kate Moss conflict, censorship. Now, we've seen that happen in Catcher in the Rye being censored, as well as Naked Lunch. Now, we are prevented from knowledge.
The worm is an extension of his subconscious ego, and thus the worm sees himself. In the worm, he sees himself. Derek?
The worm lies within the thoughts and actions of every man and as the subconscious equal. Acting as an equal part of every thought, the worm shares its own personal feelings and dictates an equal division of intellect. As intellect is the major division of the subconscious thought, the worm supplies at least half of every idea conveyed.
In the novel Siddhartha, we see how Siddhartha learns from his son. In essence, the worm. The man learns from the worm. Greg?
Siddhartha has a son, and is so proud of this son that he wants to teach him. However, Siddhartha himself could not be taught. And so, in the end, the child is forced to leave, which shows Siddhartha that not everything can be taught or controlled. Thus, Siddhartha has learned from the worm.
Therefore, if the man can learn from the worm, then the worm has something to offer. Thus, we, the student/worm, have something to convey, and therefore are our opinions actually not worth more than shit?
5, 4, 3.
The man walks up to the worm, and he's a scholar.
Well known?
Yeah, very well-known scholar. He looks on the worm as a metaphor for Canada and the Allies in the early 40s, relating it to World War II. But he's lived a boring life. He hasn't had much entertainment, so he decides he needs to have some fun with the worm.
Oh, so, like Canada, like the US and Britain, he abuses Canada for his own gains. Yes. So, and by doing this, he makes the worm lose either way. So, the worm has no way of winning. Like, what is it? So, whether the worm, he helps the worm. Yeah, that's the point. Whether he helps the worm or dig into the ground or whatever the worm wants to do, the worm loses because he loses the self-gratification of, I did it, I got into the ground, yay, yay, yay. Or if he doesn't help the worm, big bird might come along and eat the worm is kind of dead. So the worm's not going to be too happy. So the man, being very thoughtful, decides, I'll make sure the worm will not have to worry about the bird or worry that he will never get self-gratification. So he picks up the worm, cuts it in half, and then uses it for a race.
Now, as Aaron stated earlier, that the worm is a metaphor of Canada. It's been abused by the man. The scholars are abusing the worm against the worm's will.
It's a dictatorial state, just like shouldn't be allowed.
It's almost the fascist world.
Yeah, that's the one. Fascist, just like some teachers, like Fraser.
Am I supposed to conclude?
Yeah.
Three.
No, you don't.
The worm is helpless. We know that man is always helpful, and therefore man must help the worm, and therefore help himself.
Okay, ecologically speaking, there are such things as food chains. And the worm happens to be at the bottom of this chain, while we, men, are at the top. The worm, we help the worm to get into the soil. So the soil, it churns up the nutrients for the plants. And then we eat the plants. And then we eat ourselves, or we can feed the plants to our animals, and then eat the animal, or use them for work. But either how, anyhow, it'll help us in the long run by helping the worm.
Okay, in a more economical sense, we can think of the worm as Canada and the man as the US. Now, as the US, the man must think for himself, being greedy and stuff. He thinks, well, what makes my decision on this worm help me? So if he thinks, well, if I help the worm, what do I get back? And this is much like US and Canada. And he helps Canada, and in return he gets all its resources and all its natural stuff for really cheap because, hey, buddy, Canada, you know? And so it's the relationship of the man and the worm and Canada and the US, with all the power sources of the big power people over the little nothingness. And it's not really what the worm has no choice here in that thing and what the man does. So in the end, the worm has no count of anything, but the man has the almighty power.
What happens if the man is dead? The utterly will take its place.
4, 3.
Okay, the worm. The worm feeds off of its environment every day. I mean, it's always eating the bacteria. It's constantly being helped by the environment, and without it, it wouldn't make it on its own. Without man helping this worm get from A to B, we are denying it a chance of survival without too much emotional and physical impact. I'll lose the quick. Just as is the case with Monica Gall and Mr. Frailties. She too could have made it as a singer, and she could not have, but with the help of the executors and the British Power Trust, she's given a chance for better life, just as the worm is by us helping.
Yeah, in essence, the worm will not be able to flourish unless it is helped by man. Now, on every worm, there are spirals. And, speaking of archetypes, the spiral, the ancients believed that energy, physical and spiritual, flowed in spiral forms. The spiral represents both solar and lunar, masculine and feminine energies. Now, if we consider the worm to be in the middle of the road, this spiraled energy form will be transferred to the male, who will feel this bond towards it and wish to move it to the grass. Jamie.
The worm has no choice in the matter. It all comes down to the choice of the person who will move the worm. Now, he has this choice to move it or not. If he in looking at it from the point of Monica Gall, if he moves the worm, she's helped out, and therefore she flourishes. She doesn't, she dies and is just another worm. Now, she could flourish and become a bigger worm, and therefore help out something else, which helps out something else. and you could take it back and say, yes, I helped out that worm, and therefore I helped out society. But by saying this, you have, even though you have moved the worm and taken his chances away of being his wormly, little wormly things or whatever he does, you have not hurt him emotionally or physically, you've just helped him. Therefore, if Monica were not helped, she'd just be another one of the people caught in the ranks of
Society.
society.
That's gonna be much longer.